I will read Colossians chapter 1 verse 16. And Paul writes here, "For by him were all things created that are in heaven, that are in earth, visible and invisible, whether they be thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created by him and for him." Amen. Colossians chapter 1 verse 16. And it speaks about God and creation, how all of this is put together for a plan, for a purpose. Everything has purpose. Amen. And then Paul again in Acts chapter 17 verses 23 through 28, he's speaking to these pagan philosophers on Mars Hill, or also known as Ares Hill, or the Areopagus. He's speaking to them and he says, "For as I passed by and beheld your devotions, I found an altar with this inscription, to the unknown God, whom therefore ye ignorantly worship, him declare I unto you. God that made the world and all things therein, seeing that he is Lord of heaven and earth, dwelleth not in temples made with hands, neither is worshipped with men's hands, as though he needed anything, seeing he giveth to all life and breath and all things, and hath made of one blood all nations of men for to dwell on all the face of the earth, and have determined the times before appointed and the bounds of their habitation, that they should seek the Lord, if happily they might feel after him, and found him, though he be not far from every one of us. For in him we live and move and have our being. As certain also of your own poets have said, for we are also his offspring." Amen. That's Acts chapter 17, verses 23 through 28. And there in the book of Acts, he's speaking to people who are pantheistic, people who believe in many gods. So understanding that he speaks what their own poets said to them, and right there he's speaking about the providence of God in all things, God's providence, God's hand in everything. So you see God's hand in creation in Colossians 1 and 16, and in Acts 17 he's using secular poetry in order to speak to them God's providential hand, God's purposeful hand in all things. And I wanted to share some things with you. I guess you could call this a Thanksgiving message of types, but I can't ever do anything normal. I wanted to read to you just a little excerpt that I got from a scientific magazine, and I wish I had written down which magazine I got this from. But it says chromosome. Chromosome comes from the Greek words chroma, meaning color, and soma, meaning body. Chromosomes got their name from the first lab experiments in the 1880s that revealed chromosomes could be easily stained with dyes, thus making studying them easier. A gene is located on a chromosome. Every factor in inheritance is due to a particular gene. Genes specify the structure of particular proteins that make up each cell. Gene comes from the Greek word genea, meaning generation, origin, beginning, kin, or sometimes race. Gene was shortened from pangene, which means all generation. Genes contain DNA. DNA is the chemical basis of heredity. So we know we have 23 chromosomes, and those 23 chromosomes influence who we are. In each one of those chromosomes, there are genes that are on those chromosomes. We carry 50% of our genes from our father and 50% of our genes from our mother. All life is made up of cells. All cells in the human body, except red blood cells, contain chromosomes. Now, something to kind of keep in mind is that we have dominant and recessive genes. Historically, it's always been explained that the gene or trait that was expressed, the gene that wins, was random happenstance. Some educators describe it as tossing a coin. However, new work on this term called epigenetics is changing the way people look at accepted science. We have our genes, which are set, however. Our epigenetics are tags that hang on to the genes. Studies show that through environment and diet, that genetic traits can be turned on and turned off. This is excellent news for those or any of us who have lost someone to cancer, that by the right lifestyle, the right changes that can take place environmental changes that can take place. You can turn some traits on, you can turn some traits off. We believe that through the study of epigenetics that eventually they'll be able to turn cancer off. So keeping this in mind, if we understand the impact of epigenetics on genes through environment, the timing of your conception when you were born, the biological environment of your parents and the lives that they lived prior to that conception had a dramatic impact on making you who you are. If God removed one trial or one tribulation from your parents, if God had foreseen that they had relations one day earlier than the day that they had it, not to say one day, 10 minutes before the time that they had relations, you would not be you. And just to kind of, in layman's terms, let me just prove this or show this to you. Any of you all who have siblings, you can see the difference in your siblings. Your siblings come from the same DNA, was influenced by the timing, by the environment, by all of those different things. That's what created that different roll of the dice of what the world calls it, a roll of the dice that creates a totally different person, a person that can grow up in the same household and have a totally different perspective, different everything, different appearance, different skin color, different everything, different skills, different abilities, different person. So what does this mean? All the good that happened to your mom and dad before you were born shaped you. And all the bad that happened to your mom and dad before you were born shaped you. There were certain things that my father and my mother grew up that scarred them. And I don't know about this with you all, but there's certain memories, there's certain times. My father grew up and he would remind me how he grew up starving in Puerto Rico during the Depression. My mother grew up telling me, she was telling me when I was growing up about how rough and how mean her mother had been to her, and how rough her father was, and how her father used to beat her and her brothers. Here's the crazy part though. If you took one beating away from my mother, if you changed one circumstance, my combination of DNA would never have come into existence. I would be a different person. So could God have prevented the bad things that have happened to your family? Yes, but you wouldn't be here. By changing all of the bad things, he would erase you. Because you are an accumulation of all the things that happened to your parents. So let's even go a little farther now. Look at the conception of our children. Some of us had children in not the best of circumstances. People weren't happy when we were pregnant. Some of us were unhappy because it took us so long to have kids. Different circumstances. And oftentimes when you have kids, it's not a perfect circumstance. But if you changed the mixture of providence and the circumstance, we wouldn't have Nadia and we wouldn't have Courtney. We'd have kids with our DNA mixture, but they would be different children. There was one of those little tests on Facebook. If you had this potion and it made you the fastest man alive, or you took this potion, it would allow you to time travel. I could never want to time travel. Because to time travel would change the stimuli, the providence, the circumstances that gave me my children. But Romans 8:28 says, and we know that all things work together for good to them that love God, to them who are the called according to his purpose. Romans 8:28. Many people attack God because of the bad things that happen to them. But what they don't understand is if God stopped many of the bad things from occurring, your parents wouldn't be your parents and you wouldn't be you. Your very environment shaped the DNA that made you. Let me provide 3 takeaways. Even tragedy has shaped you. You just don't want to admit it, or you don't want to think about it. Even tragedy has shaped you. So be thankful. Be thankful this Thanksgiving. Because even tragedy in your life has shaped you, even shaped your very DNA. If things had quote unquote gone better, you wouldn't be here. So be thankful. And I really don't believe in luck, but I know Christians throw that word around sometimes in ignorance. And many Christians will go and say, I can't believe my luck. I can't believe my luck. I can't believe this would happen to me. Let me just share this. Sperm counts vary from 20 million to 100 million sperm cells per milliliter of ejaculation. You were the blessed one. You were the one that defied the odds. So be thankful. Be thankful. You can never say you're 1 in 20 million or 1 in 100 million. Even if you believe in luck, you can never call yourselves unlucky. Because God ordained for your little fish to make it to market. God ordained for you to make it. Tragedy has shaped you. Be thankful. If things had gone perfectly, you wouldn't be you. You wouldn't even be the person that you are. You'd be a different person. You would not even exist. And if you ever think that you're unlucky, your chances were 1 in 20 million at best and 1 in 100 million at worst, and you made it. So be thankful. Be thankful. Be thankful for everything, the good and the bad. Because science proves that Romans 8:28 is true. All things not just work together for good, all things have worked together for you to even be here. All things work together for you to even exist. Because when mom and dad got together, for all their trials, for all their tribulations, they may not have even loved each other in certain circumstances. They may never have lived with one another. They may have cursed each other out and went their separate ways. But all of their circumstances had an impact on their DNA, and it made you.
Behold, I was shapen in iniquity, and in sin did my mother conceive me.
Amen. All things truly work together for good to those who love the Lord. That it didn't have to go this way. If we think about things from a grander scheme, I hope that we'll be thankful.